All right, so today we're going to be checking out this guy, which is a plugin called St4b or Stab. And this is a plugin by William Light. Great dude, great dev, and it is a multi-band transient shaper. So if you're like me, you might be asking yourself, why do I need another transient shaper in my life? And I'm here to tell you that this transient shaper is actually a lot better than the other ones out there. And also, you can use it as kind of a really clever sound design tool due to this delta button, which we will get into later. But off the bat, I want to just do a quick comparison to other transient shapers just to kind of explain what this does differently and why it's even worth attention in an ocean of endless transient shapers out there. So first things first, I kind of just have a couple random transient shapers that I happen to have on hand. So we got the kilohertz one, we've got St4b, of course, and then we've got drum bus. And this is just a quick example. This is going to apply to a lot of transient shapers out there. And this isn't to say that like any of these other tools are bad. Like they're all fine. But St4b does something unique. So let's go ahead and just record out, I've already done this, a clip with each of these different transient shapers at max settings, essentially. On the kilohertz one, I have max attack, but I'm doing two different speeds, 100% and 500%. And then, yeah, the drum bus I just have maxed, and then you can see I have stab max as well. So now we're just going to listen to these really quick. This is what they sound like. It's just, this is the dry kick, just a really boring kick sound. And then, yeah, you can hear all the clicks in succession. Great. And honestly, we don't even really care what these sound like because all I'm interested in is showing you visually what these are actually doing differently. So we're going to zoom into the actual control sample here. This is just, again, like a sine wave pitching down. There's nothing that interesting about it. But if we look at the transient, you can see we have this nice chunk, and then it kind of just ramps down after that. First up, we've got kilohertz. They've got, on the 500% speed, it's definitely going to grab a really tiny chunk of this transient, which is impressive. Like that is quick. But if we zoom all the way in here, you can see we got this kind of ramp up action going on, which obviously is not ideal for the transient. If we look at 100% speed, we get a much cleaner result. Obviously, it's not going to be able to cut it as short, but over here we can see that there's none of that ramping happening. And in general, it's a clean curve. This is done a pretty good job. So that's the kilohertz one. We'll see how it stacks up against stab in a second. But now let's take a look at drum bus, which again, this looks fine. Like this looks like it did a pretty good job isolating it. But as we zoom in, there's actually some sketchy shit happening in our transient here. And you can see even as I zoom out, it like boop, pops out of existence right there. So something weird is going on with the transient detection and this. I don't think it really matters because if you're putting drum bus on something, you're probably trying to make it sound kind of scuffed anyways. But at any rate, that is definitely not a clean transient detection happening right there. So now let's look at St4b, and you can see that there's just this insanely fast attack time. And within 3 samples, it's basically, or 3 wave cycles rather, it's basically detected the transient and already started fading it. Like that is insanely fast. If we compare this to like the clean kilohertz cut right here, again, this is fine, but look how much faster this transient is. Like this is insane. So again, a lot of people don't even seek this out necessarily because a lot of these transient shapers are modeled towards like analog drums and aren't thinking about this sort of like artificial clicky transient that's happening at the beginning of drum sounds. But in electronic music, like a lot of the focus isn't realism necessarily, and B, you are working with a lot of these sort of like artificial clicky transients. I mean, sometimes people straight up are just putting like pitch down sine waves at the front of their kicks. So a traditional transient transient shaper rather is just not really designed to capture that quick of a movement in the sound. But this one will pick up anything. It's really fast. It's really impressive. So how does this actually sound in actual practice? let's just stop comparing this to other things for a while and get into this here and play with it for a bit. So here it is on just like a regular break. Here's the sound. Oh, here's the sound. All right. If we kill all the transients, so if you wanted to subtract all the transients out, it sounds like this. And we just max it, just make it fully punchy. Sounds like this. And that's just a massive difference. So already just by cranking that all the way up, you get a pretty cool result. But the other thing I really love about this, with it being multi-band, which honestly, I like a lot of things that are multi-band. I'm just, it's why is it multi-band? You know, it seems like a trend almost. But with this, you actually get to color your whole drum palette along with the transient shaping. So by kind of shifting around the gains here as we do this and like selectively choosing these attack values, just clipping so much. It's okay. And then we can also change the crossovers here. So if we wanted to like shift up this mid band a bit, we could do that. But yeah, so much shaping potential. Again, just to A-B it really quick. We can hit this bypass button too. Yeah, sick. Just to give one more example. So I'm going to clear this out. This is the only way I know how to do it. So we're just going to do this really quick. And then, come on. And then let's listen to this other break over here. Sounds like this. I don't even know what this is. Let's turn the volume back up. Here we go. Great. It's pretty muted, but it's got a nice texture to it. So, yeah, I'm just going to totally wing it here and just start leveling this out. Keep this like loose sub under it, or you could tighten it up if you want. Yeah, but I mean, A being that. A little too spicy, but yeah, you get the idea. Like, just a world of difference in kind of refining the character of all of these sounds and making them nice and punchy, but also like leveling it out. And it's just a way more refined tool to kind of really sculpt the whole dynamic element of these sounds, rather than just sticking one transient shaper that's kind of grabbing everything differently. It also has a companion St4b. I don't even know if I have it installed. Yeah. It's got this as well, which is just like the regular, just one band if you really don't want to mess with all this, which is fair. But yeah, most of the time I actually find that this multi-band is useful because it's really cool to be able to individually level these bands as I'm changing the transient amount, because a lot of times when you take out transient information, it just gets lost in volume. But perceptually, if you just turn it back up, it doesn't necessarily need to have really clicky transients. It just needs to be present in volume. So you can kind of treat each band a little bit differently and get a different sort of feel of the looseness of like the hats and the snare and the kick and all of that. Anyway, so that's all great. This is like standard, like chuck it on the drums, do whatever to it, and it will sound good. So that's a pretty good selling point. But a lot of the reason I'm interested in this, beyond that, even though I totally use it as an insert all the time, is this delta button. So again, I'm going to just kind of re-level everything out here. So we'll just double click these. If I hit the delta button with nothing actually being done in the plugin, you won't hear anything. And that's because the delta is showing you what's actually being changed. So now if I change any of this a little bit, you should be able to hear. Yeah, there's the difference. So if we crank these all up, now you're hearing just the transient information that it's adding. And if we turn off delta, you can kind of hear that. And what's crazy is now we can isolate out just the transient information and use this as a transient splitter to start creating all sorts of crazy effects and doing stuff that you really couldn't do otherwise to your drum samples. So let's group this. And there are plenty of ways to transient split, by the way, not just with this, but using the low, mid, high band power in kind of parallel with this technique is really awesome. I'll show you. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to put this in delta mode, and then we need to use phase cancellation to basically get everything except the delta, and then we'll have two separate channels, which are just the transient information and then everything but the transient information. If you don't know what any of that means, don't worry about it. I'll put a rack. You don't need to know how to do this. It's just if you do want to know, I'll show you. So basically we're going to put this in delta, and then we're going to come down here and duplicate it. So now we have two of these, and we basically need to make a version that's canceling out the delta. So we're just going to put this against the dry signal, and already there's a phase shift in this, or a phase inversion rather. So just by putting it against the dry, we're going to get this. But the catch is that we can't just use a dry channel. So I've muted this. Now we're just in this this chain here. Oops, I should mute this one. We're just in this chain here. So playing this against the dry is what we want. But the problem is that this is adding latency. So if we hover over, if you look down here while I hover, you can see that this is adding 2 samples of latency. So if we want these to actually phase cancel, they need to be exactly in the same position. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab just another one of these and paste it here. But this is really important. It has to just be doing nothing. The only reason we're adding this is to get the exact same amount of latency as the one up here. So now we basically have done this split, and we can hear this. It should be everything except for the transients. And then this is everything, or just the transients rather. And that's really nice. But right now, if we sum these together, it's not going to be exactly perfect, because we actually have to phase invert this whole thing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bounce that down, and we're going to add a phase inversion just with the utility. There you go. And now it should be perfect. Yep. So now we've created a split. And again, I'll give you a rack so you don't have to think about that. But once you get the rack, you basically need to know that you don't want to touch any of these things, because all of this needs to be where it is in order to work. Like this phase inversion has to exist in order to actually hear the effect. So essentially from here, all we have to do, if we solo these out, we can just chuck any effect we want on either of these things separately, and this starts to get crazy. So one of the coolest things, just like right off the bat, that is maybe kind of obvious, but if you put a reverb on this, now the transients aren't being affected by the reverb, and you're kind of gonna like style transform the room. It's a much cleaner way of doing it. So I'm gonna just choose these made for drums impulses and make sure our blend is all the way to convolve, and then let's listen to this. And even if we turn the dry wet all the way up, and just to show you, like if we take this out of this group and just like turn all that off, it's obviously gonna like ruin the entire drum break. So being able to separately affect these things is amazing. And we can put any effect we want in here, obviously, so you can start going crazy. Let's try like using a distortion or something. Ow. We'll turn that down considerably. Turn the size way down. So this is really cool. I'm actually going to switch over to the rack really quick now that I've showed you how to build that, because what I've done is I've mapped out the macros for each of the St4bs. So all of this I've just put here. So now you can actually change all of the settings in these macros and it'll reflect on both of them. And that's going to allow us to kind of play with this and change stuff over here and get a different sound. So let's pull just what we have, just these two effects, and just stick them right here. This is the exact same rack, so we don't have to worry about that. Just get rid of this one, and then yeah, now over here we can play with like the gain values of both of them at once. And since they're phase canceling out, you don't hear it when there's no effects, but when you put effects on here, the difference starts to create all these interesting effects. So let's hear this. And if we turn these down or like towards the middle, then there will be less difference and there will be less information in the actual transient channel. So now let's try just like adding some other stuff in here for fun. I'm not really feeling this amp. Let's try like something dynamic. And then we can have stuff like just on the transients if we really wanted to. Like, I don't know, let's put a... Yeah. And you can just put anything. Like we can maybe try like a phaser or something. Like Yeah, we can try like maybe overdriving the transients. Try OTTing the transients. Just add another frequency shift. Like it just goes on and on and on and on. What the hell? Yeah. Just gonna write a whole song. It's just like, and then of course you can come and like put another stab on the end of this. You know what I mean? Like. Jesus Christ. Okay, sorry, I'm getting carried away. But you can see how deep the rabbit hole doth go, and it is quite a good time. So yeah, I'm gonna include this rack in the description or on my website or something. But the main takeaway is just these are controlling. This is the one that we added at the end. So if we look actually in the rack, just so you can kind of see what's going on here. These are just controlling each of these bands, and we want these to be the same on this one and this one. Otherwise, you'll get weird phasing shit, which could be cool, you know? So I've experimented with like manually having these be different as well so that they don't sum properly, which can be really interesting. But a whole world of possibilities with transient splitting and St4b in general. I think it's a really nice plugin that just kind of barely does anything but does everything it needs to really well. And so with that, I will say please go support Will, buy his shit. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. Also, he's working on all sorts of cool stuff, so yeah, just keep an eye on his page and what he's got coming. And then of course, if you want to do lessons or you want to give me money, then go do that. All right. Love you guys. Peace.